Hey guys, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devon Harris. And of course, you know we share ideas and insights that are going to inspire you and challenge you to live your absolute best life. So if that's something you're interested in, man, you know you're in the right place. So welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. Our guest today has had one of the most storied career you could ever think of. You know, between 1974 and 1977, he won 10 individual NCAA titles. In 1977, he was awarded the James E. Sullivan Award as a U.S. Top amateur athlete. In 1976, at the Montreal Olympics, he was the most decorated U.S. Olympic athlete for that entire Olympics. He won 5 Olympic medals, 4 gold, 1 silver, broke a couple of records. He had the record in the 200-meter backstroke. In fact, he was the first person ever to dip below 2 minutes in that event. And that record lasted 7 years after retirement. Likewise, his record in the 100-meter backstroke also lasted 7 years. He was the first swimmer in Olympic history to win 2 medals on the same day of competition. And you know, with that kind of list of accomplishment, he was inducted into the U.S. Olympic Swimming Hall of Fame back in 1984. He was a torchbearer, Olympic torchbearer for 4 Olympic Games, 84, 96, 2002, 2004. And, you know, since his days in the pool, what has he been up to? Well, he has served as an analyst, a play-by-play announcer, a sideline reporter for over 35 different sports, over 8 Olympic Games on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, ESPN, and Turner Broadcasting. He's an author. He has written the book. He has contributed to the book, The Power of Character. He has compiled the book Awaken the Olympian Within. I've had my copy for years. It's a little bit worn, but I've had it, you know, and he has also written Eureka, How Innovation Changes the Olympics and Everything Else. Volunteered for so many different charities. Look, we could go and spend the entire time speaking about this man's accomplishment, but let's just jump into it. I'm so honored to be able to welcome the legend, John Naber, to Keep On Pushing. John, welcome.
Devon, thank you. I'm blushing over here by all that language. Thank you.
Oh no, hey, the truth is the truth, man, and we are inspired by you. I've been inspired by you for many years. So let's go back to the beginning a little bit, John. I know you spent part of your early years in Europe, in Italy and England, where you learned to play real football, of course, they call it soccer here, and cricket, not the bug, but the sport. And then you moved back to the US, and at 6'6", everyone thought maybe you should be playing basketball. That didn't work out too well for you. How did you end up in the pool?
Well, to be honest with you, I befriended a kid in algebra class. As you said, I lived in Europe. I played cricket and soccer, but those sports were not sports that took place in America. So when I returned to the United States, I had nowhere to go. I befriended a kid in my algebra class, and he was the silver medalist at the Junior Olympics in swimming, and he got his name in the local newspaper as a celebrity. He was the second fastest 13, 14-year-old backstroker in the country. And I befriended him. And when he borrowed some money from me, I asked for the money back, and he sort of shrugged his shoulders. He ran through the locker room, jumped in the pool. I ran through the locker room, and I jumped in the pool. And that's how my swimming career really began, as a freshman in high school in Woodside, California.
Mm-hmm. So at 13, was that considered late to be starting competitive swimming?
Yeah, I did start late compared to most. There are other swimmers who started equally late, but it's very rare. But I did get the Most Improved Award 3 years in a row.
Yes, I read that. So did you find the learning curve steep, or was swimming something that just kind of came naturally to you?
You know, it came very naturally. I'm big-handed. long, lanky. My joints are very loose. My ankles are very floppy. I'm built to swim. And as they say proverbially, I took to the water like a duck to water.
Ah, so lanky, big hands, limbs all over the place. So are you saying that's why I don't swim as well as you?
That's it. That's it.
I'm significantly shorter, and small hands. The joints don't work as well. But
that's the only reason you don't swim as fast as me.
Yeah, well, probably. No. So when did the Olympics come on your radar?
When I was living in Europe, my parents took us on a Greek island cruise on a little Mediterranean fishing boat or ocean vessel. And we stopped in Olympia, Greece. And on a tour of the ancient Olympic site, the tour guide explained to me about the sportsmanship and the character and the ethics being an integral part of the Olympic movement. And he talked about the Hall of Shame. There was a tunnel through which all the athletes who were about to compete would march into the opening ceremonies. And any athlete who ever got caught cheating had a statue carved in their honor, placed in the Hall of Shame, made their hometown pay for it. So if you were ever a cheater, you were placed in the Hall of Shame, and that was such a disgrace that nobody wanted to be caught cheating. And I told my mom, there's a sporting event called the Olympics where sportsmanship and fair play is more important than winning. I want to be an Olympian. And she said, really? What sport? I said, I have no idea, but I want to be an Olympian before I found the sport of swimming.
Right.
So that was my first exposure, and that's to the ancient Olympics. The modern Olympic Games, I first watched them on television in 1972 when Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals. By then I was already a swimmer. I had actually competed in those Olympic trials and was close enough to begin thinking, maybe I could be an Olympian too.
Right.
And it might happen as early as 1976.
Awesome. So I know you speak a lot about investing in your dreams. What does that mean to you, John?
Well, first of all, you got to have a dream. You got to have a fanciful desire, a wish, wishful thinking. Okay, let's call it that, wishful thinking. And in order to have that, you've got to have a pretty creative imagination, because the chance of winning a gold medal is less likely than the chance of winning a state lottery ticket.
Yeah.
And so you're really not being realistic when you want to fancifully see yourself as an Olympic champion. Mm-hmm. But if you have that dream, that fancy, then you can go along the rest of the process. I think kids, have dreams about being firemen and astronauts, and those dreams die far too soon. And there are many kids who dream about being an Olympian, and they abandon those dreams sooner than they have to. Yeah. But everyone who did go on to become an Olympic champion held on to that same dream. Nadia Comaneci explains in the book you held up how she watched Olga Korbut in 1972. And so Nadia stood on her couch, and she stood as if she was receiving the gold medal, and it reinforced the dream in her mind.
Indeed.
Many of the Olympians I met had their dream of becoming an Olympian ignited by shaking the hands of another Olympian. When you meet an Olympian, they're relatively ordinary. I look at NBA players and I don't relate. I look at NFL players, they're way too big for me.
Yeah.
If you meet an Olympian, they're usually shaped like you. They're not much bigger than you. They're not much smarter than you. But they just hang on to the dream, and the ordinariness of their physique, their personality, allows everybody to dream. And there's a sport in the Olympics for everybody. You may not swim, I may not push a bobsled, but there is a sport for everybody. You can win a gold medal for standing still if you can hold a bow and arrow perfectly still.
John Naber believes Olympic champions are not extraordinary people. It's true, we're not. We are ordinary people who found a way to accomplish extraordinary results in the area of life that matters most to us.
It's interesting that you brought up the word, extraordinary or, very ordinary, because the Olympics came into my consciousness back in 1976, the games you competed in. But not because of you, but a guy called Donald Quarry, Jamaican, who won the 200 meter, short according to all the experts to win. But it was big news in Jamaica. 3 years later, I was inspired to become an Olympian because I'm watching ABC Wild World of Sports, one of your former network, and they had a program called Road to Moscow. And in it, they featured athletes from all over the world, the different stories, sporting stories. They told stories about their lives. And the thing that I took away from that, John, was the fact that these people were very average and ordinary, but they had extraordinary dreams and an equal desire, extraordinary desire to realize those dreams. And you're absolutely right. You use the word fanciful over the course of these interviews. You know, every Olympian have spoken to have used the word delusional, which, you know, so you have these, because you have to be delusional. These dreams have to be fanciful to believe that you can be one of today 6 billion people on the planet to go to the Olympic Games and even more so win a medal.
Devon, if I can interrupt for a second.
Yeah, sure.
If you watch the Olympics on television, there's always an interviewer at the finish line ready to ask the winner a question. And the question is almost always the same. It's, you just won a gold medal, how does it feel? And the answer, if you pay close attention, is almost always the same. Most of the athletes say it felt like a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
They use that very sentence because that's what started them on the process, the fanciful dream. And you know what? Reality is pretty much what you hope it to be.
Yes, yes. And I guess, you know, part of the reason why we're having this conversation, why I have this podcast, is to encourage our listeners. And you mentioned young kids who give up on their dreams to become a firefighter or whatever, not to allow the reality to dash those fanciful dreams, but to become that firefighter or that accountant and then be able to say, yes, it feels like a dream come true.
Most people allow what I call temporary negative evidence to take their eyes off the dream.
Mm-hmm.
We were not born knowing how to ride a bicycle. And if we decided to become cyclists at age 2, we'd say, I can't ride a bike, therefore I got to give up.
Right.
But if you realize that you can't ride a bike now, but maybe in the future you could, then all of a sudden you don't let go of those dreams quite so fast.
Yes, that's so true. So I used to quote you a lot in my early days of speaking, John. You know, you speak about the fact that the Olympic athlete view each practice, each party unattended, each distraction withstood, and as a price that they willingly pay. Because you have to pay the price before you receive the prize. Now, we live in what I call a microwave society. Everyone wants success. No, they want to be the overnight success, right? What advice do you have for people? How do you get them to embrace this Olympic ethos of paying the price before the prize?
Well, let's begin with the fundamental lesson that sport teaches is the concept of delayed gratification. If you want something really good, you have to say no to the less good in order to get the really good. And so you have to understand that all the best things come with a price. Some people refer to this as a sacrifice, but it isn't a sacrifice. Or rather, let me rephrase that. A sacrifice is a wise exchange of alternatives. Eating the hot fudge sundae and not losing the weight, that's not a good sacrifice. That's a bad price.
Yes.
But saying no to the extra dessert and looking good on your wedding day, that was a good exchange. And so if we realize there are certain prices that we must pay that are justified and are wise, then all of a sudden, that's what I call the work, the hard work effort. You were lifting a lot of weights. Nobody was cheering. Nobody was watching. There were no camera crews there. You were paying a price. And I was doing the same, swimming laps. And that's the price that we willingly pay. Coach John Wooden, the basketball coach, said his greatest assistant coach was the bench. Because if an athlete didn't try hard, he would be put on the bench, and that would be his punishment.
Right.
And if you really want to be good, being denied the chance to train is a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think of it that way, then working hard, training hard is not a punishment, it's an investment. And if you look at it as an investment, it's putting pennies in a piggy bank, then all of a sudden, that's a good thing. You go without the penny today, but with interest and over time, compound interest, all of a sudden, you're going to get a lot better result.
You're absolutely right. I speak to kids all the time, and it amazes me because you'll have a kid in high school, let's say, who is a really good athlete and a terrible student. And I try to make that correlation. I'm like, dude, I have trained all my life. I've often felt like I'm going to die. I've had, gotten injured and just totally exhausted. But I've never felt that way picking up a book. And it's the same, for us Olympians. The quiz that they get at the end of the week or the month or the semester in school is very similar to going to the Olympics. It's like a big quiz, and you have to do the work before you get to the Olympics. Otherwise, it's way too late. You have to put the effort in your relationship or in the sales process, as you speak about as well, the same way we as athletes do it.
It's interesting. I was a student. I was probably a B+ student. I got some good grades, but you can cram for the midterm the night before the test.
Yeah.
You cannot cram for the Olympics the week before opening ceremonies.
So literally,
you got to pay the price all along.
This is true. You can probably do what we do as a Jamaican bobsled team and start, 4 months before. But that's also not an accurate reflection of the preparation. Yes, it's true that our team got started a few months before the Olympics and we're learning this brand new sport. But what people don't take into account are the many years, weeks, months, days we spent in Jamaica honing and developing our athletic abilities, our bodies, and our minds to a certain extent. So someone could teach us the rudiments of pushing a bobsled, and we could master that with all the years of applying all the years of training that we had done before in order to get to the Olympic Games.
Yeah, you'd spend decades building an athlete's body, and then that athlete could become a bobsledder relatively quickly. But even so, you were not merely the best Jamaican bobsled team. You were one of the best, how many bobsled teams in the world?
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. So it's amazing. Yeah, you're right. That the price must be paid before you receive the prize at the end. So it's 1977, as you say. In 1976, you were, on one day, you demonstrated that you were the best in the world at what you did. But the most important part of that process there was, were the skills that you developed along the way that you're able to use for other part of your life as well. Is that what you describe as a gold medal process, John?
The very best birthday cake recipe is not just flour, it's not just sugar, it's not just eggs, it's not just cream. It's a combination of a lot of different ingredients, and there are a lot of different ingredients that go into a gold medal. But in my experience, they have to be taken in a certain sequence. You have to have the dream first. Otherwise, you won't have the attitude or commitment, which comes second.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to set a goal, which comes third. And then you have to have a plan to reach the goal. That comes fourth. And then you have to break the plan into manageable, bite-sized stepping stones. That comes fifth. Mm-hmm. All of that occurred, those first 5 steps occurred in the privacy of my bedroom. Step number 6 was when I first started swimming laps and lifting weights. Then step number 7 is overcoming adversity. And then step number 8 is delivering the goods under pressure. Mm-hmm. Performance under pressure. When I got to the Olympics, the first 7 steps had already taken place. At the Olympics, I only had to worry about one thing. And I knew I could break 2 minutes in the 200-meter backstroke. I just didn't know if I would break 2 minutes in the 200-meter backstroke. That's where the drama comes from. Yeah. We all know we are capable of a perfect performance. The question is, will we deliver it at the moment of truth? Mm-hmm. That's what makes the Olympics so exciting, because the moment of truth only comes along once every 4 years.
That is very true. And you miss the boat, then it's another 4 years at least, if you're lucky, to make the team again. So let's go back to that last step, being able to deliver when it matters. Because I think a lot of us, whether it's the Olympics for athletes or the big sales call, or I don't know, maybe the big proposal, you want to ask her to marry you, a lot of a lot of us kind of mess up in that moment when we're supposed to deliver. What advice do you have, for the sales guy who wants to really close this big deal?
If you're nervous before the moment of truth, you are either underprepared or you have a self-confidence issue. You can train your self-confidence early in the season by challenging yourself to do certain things that other people are unwilling to try. Mm-hmm. And you can build your self-confidence. If you show up, going back to the academic example, if I took a semester midterm and was unprepared, I would feel horrible walking into class. Mm-hmm. But if I owned up for months and I had known the material inside out, backwards and forwards, I could walk into the classroom, have my head held high with confidence. So you have to pay the price. The act of paying the price in advance should build the self-assurance and the confidence. And what many people don't realize is that most Olympic Games are won because the winner didn't choke while everyone else did. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the middle of a race and you're feeling tired and you feel like you want to pull up, all you have to do is imagine, what does your opponent feel? He's also tired. Exactly. He's also want to give up. So you then hang on and let him screw up his race, and you're going to coast to victory. Well, I don't mean coast, but you'll fight your way to victory, because most Olympic victories occur before the starting gun, I believe, if you do the preparation in advance.
Yes. So when you were racing and you got on the starting blocks, were there any nervous energy within you? Because I watched other athletes and you see them sitting there and they may make a big yawn. I know myself, even in high school, when I was so sure I was going to win, I was a nervous wreck until I was under the starter's gun. Then there was no nervousness.
Some athletes show a little bit of nervousness. I'm still nervous when I'm about to deliver a speech to a corporate group. Nerves are not a bad thing. It's good to have a little bit of butterflies in your stomach. It's good because it makes you alert, it makes you awake, it makes you aware. But I also believe that if you've done the work, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't feel over your head.
Right.
You should feel like you belong here. Now's a chance, but I have to get it right. There's always going to be the possibility of a mistake. And if you come in not even caring, just going to sloppily kind of wander around, you're probably going to make a mistake. Yeah. I was aware of what I was capable of. I wasn't keenly aware of what my East German opponent was capable of. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, this might be interesting. But if I only focus on my lane, which is the only part of the pool that I can control, then I can ignore him. And if he's faster than me, then he deserves to win, right? If his best race is better than my best race, he deserves to win. And I'm happy to congratulate him, as I did in my silver medal race when I was eager to congratulate the gold medalist, Bruce Furness.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there is always going to be a little bit of nervous energy, and I describe it as your desire to want to do well. So if you've prepared yourself well, and you step into the arena, whether it's the swimming pool, the bobsled start, or the conference room, knowing that you are well prepared. The nervous energy is like, man, I want to do well, and it's the moment where you have to deliver, as you say, and you kind of trust your training, trust your preparation to get it done. So as I said, the gold medal process, it starts with having a dream and going through all those things that you're doing private in preparing and creating a plan. Talk to us a little bit about the plan, because a lot of people, they have a dream and they don't necessarily have a great plan, and things tend to go sideways.
Well, this is where a good coach is so important, because a good coach knows what to do. A good coach can help give you the plan. He won't make it for you, but he can explain to you, this is what you can expect. So you better do this much weight training. You better keep your diet under these many calories. You better compete in these events. Just wanting to win a gold medal is nice, but it isn't a plan. I needed to know how many yards, where was the best race to swim, how many events to enter. Should I try to stretch for 5 gold medals, or should I just retreat and focus on 3 races? These are the challenges that face all of the elite athletes. And to be honest with you, it's not easy. And that's why the coaches deserve a lot of credit for what they do.
Yeah, awesome. So I know you competed in the amateur era, John, when athletes weren't paid, right? And so you had to
weren't allowed to be paid.
Weren't even allowed to be paid. You're absolutely right. And you know, you had to transition to what I'm going to describe as a real world in terms of pursuing income-producing activities, as it were, right? And in true keep on pushing fashion, you made that transition. You know, we're very successful, you know, as a commentator, as an author, as a speaker, as a coach, and so on. What advice do you have for athletes today? Well, actually, not just for athletes, but for anyone who is transitioning. There may be transitioning from a job, from one job to the next, from an industry to the other, from a broken relationship to the next, and they want to get better at what they do. What advice do you have for them?
The big epiphany I had to face upon retiring from swimming was the mental shift from a win-lose mentality. In sport, if I win, you got to lose. If you win, I'm going to lose. But in business or in life, in relationships, it's got to be a win-win mentality. For me to get a lot of money, I have to provide a lot of value. I have to give you something that's worth the money you're about to pay me. So it changes it's not an adversarial battle, but rather a cooperative way. How can we both benefit from this relationship, from this exchange, from this transaction? How can we both benefit? And I remember after retiring from my swimming career, I realized I'd probably never be the best in the world at anything else, right? I mean, I might, but it wasn't likely. I didn't have a dream to be the best mountain climber, the best businessman, the best lawyer. But then I said, but how can I use what I've already accomplished to help bring value to my community? So I could explain the intricacies of the Olympic gold medal process to my viewers on television or to my audience in the crowd and help them achieve their goals. Now all of a sudden I'm delivering value. If I just show up to a Rotary Club or Kiwanis meeting and I talk about myself, I was born here, I did this, I like movies, I play games, this is what I did, yada, yada, yada. That could be rather boring.
Yes.
But the moment I said, now let me explain what I did in the pool and how it'll help you sell more life insurance. All of a sudden my audience's ears perked right up and they said, this guy's got something to tell me. And that's when I began adding value. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, because you're being relevant to your audience, and it makes complete sense. You know, in my keep on pushing philosophy, one of the things I speak about is learning how to use your existing skill set and knowledge and experience and applying them to this ever-shifting, changing environment in which we live in order to create new opportunities and, as you say, bring value. When you do that, you're bringing value. Obviously, you're making yourself more valuable and you're bringing value to the people that you're meeting. Let's jump back to 1976, John, because it was a very different world that we lived in then. You know, I remember my first Olympics in '88, which similar to 76 in terms of the geopolitics, right? I was a newly minted Army officer, and I was taught that everyone behind the Iron Curtain was evil. And here I am, I'm in the Olympic Village, and I'm killing the Pac-Man, right? I'm still pretty good at Pac-Man. I can't do this stuff. And to my left is a guy from Poland. To my right is a guy from East Germany. And it kind of dawned on me that they're not evil, that we have more in common than readily meets the eye. They're there to compete and, you know, be at their best for their country, as I am. And we kind of suffer from the same similar human frailties and foibles. What was your experience? Because certainly in '76, the Cold War was raging. 2 Olympics later, there was this big boycott.
Yeah, it's hard to think of your role model as evil. When I became an excellent backstroker, my role model became the defending Olympic champion, a swimmer from East Germany named Roland Matthes.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the East Germans were on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and our politicians were thinking of them as evil. But I had a poster of Roland Matthes in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I would read a magazine about what workouts he did and what times he performed. And I considered him a role model and kind of a hero to me. So when I got the chance to meet him, I wanted to befriend him. I didn't want to defeat him or humiliate him.
Right.
And I think in one main way, when I finally did push him off the top of the mountain, it was in the USA East German dual meet in 1974. This is 2 years before our Olympics. And I handed him his first loss in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he hugged me. He congratulated me in a warm embrace, as if he knew how hard he had to work to get there. He was aware how hard I had to work to beat him. Now, I didn't break his records, so he was still the favorite at the next Olympics.
Yeah.
But I felt the sense of mutual respect. And in the Olympic Village, that's one of the magical elements of the Olympics. You force these competitors to share a food service line or a video game, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden they get to relate to each other as human beings. Once again, every Olympian I've met is ordinary in their personality, but they're extraordinary in their performance.
Right.
So if you can separate the two, you can look at your opponent not as a villain, but as it's like two kids wanting to see who's the tallest. They have to stand back to back, and somebody has to measure it, right?
Yeah.
There's no good guy, bad guy in that contrast. We're just trying to see who's the tallest. The word competition comes from the Latin com, meaning together, and petition, meaning to seek.
Mm-hmm.
A competition is where people come together to seek to discover something. We're going to find out who's the fastest,
Mm-hmm.
who can jump the highest, who's the strongest. And without your opponent, there is no competition. If you don't have the other guy trying to beat you, there's no discovery involved.
Right.
And as a result, your opponent is a partner in this journey of discovery and deserves our respect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, the issues I find, certainly when we're in the Olympic Village, I describe it as utopia. Because it's almost as if the world is shut off for 16 days and everybody, and it's not just a euphemism, everybody is living as a brotherhood. And it's this weird dynamic where, you're right, we come to seek, we're competing to be our best, to beat the guy in the pool or on the bobsled track, but at the end of the day, you're still part of this brotherhood. And it for me, the saddest part of the Olympic Games is when the flame is extinguished, because it means utopia has ended and it's time to get back to the real world. How was that for you?
In the closing ceremonies of the Montreal Olympics, the music was composed by a native Canadian who wrote his own funeral dirge when he was a 16-year-old, and that was the farewell music we sang. Wow. We danced to, and I'm holding an Arab in my left hand and an Israeli in my right, and we're dancing in circles, and we don't want the party to end. I agree completely. It was a sense of utopia, and there's a sense of melancholy when the flame goes out. The entire audience and every athlete heaves a sigh of sorrow. Like, oh, it's bad, because the spirit in the village is one of the most empowering and over joyful experiences I've ever had. And I've never been back. I only competed in one Olympics. I've not been an Olympian in any other. Mm-hmm. And I'm always the kid with his nose up to the fence looking in. Oh, I wish I could be in there.
Yeah.
That's what the love is.
And that's a pretty amazing story. So here you are at the closing ceremony in '76, dancing with an Arab and an Israeli 4 years after the massacre in Munich. That again speaks to the power of the Olympic spirit.
Yeah, and the sad part, you may not remember this, but there was an Olympic boycott in 1976 as well. many of the South African countries, governments took their athletes out of the village. They'd already come in, they moved in. When I was coming through the security, entering the village for the first time, there were South African athletes sitting on their luggage, waiting for the train to take them back to the airport to go home. They were denied the chance to compete. And when that happened to the Americans in 1980, I felt nothing but sympathy and a little bit of shame that they had to be treated as political pawns.
Yes, I forgot about 76. You're absolutely right. Certainly remember 80 and 84. So, I did not mention in my introduction, John, that you serve as chairman of the Character Count Sports, an organization devoted to sports-based character education that teaches ethics, character development to schools, clubs, and other community organizations. I know that you're certainly involved in a number of other volunteer organizations. Can you speak to us a little bit about your charity work, your volunteering work?
Well, sure. Character Counts is a program in California that educates schools, police departments, politicians on how to think about ethics and character. One example I would share is that if you think of cheating in the Olympics as gamesmanship, and if we define gamesmanship as trying to win at any cost, then we look at sportsmanship as trying to win on your opponent's best day. I want to beat you. Don't kid yourself about that. But I don't want you to perform less than your best. I want to earn the gold medal, not just have the gold medal. So the world of sport is a microcosm of teaching opportunities to educate people how to think about character and ethics. And these are the lessons that are so clearly visible because they're right in front of a video camera. We can take sports analogies and bring them to the corporate and educational community, and it helps people think about character and ethics in a more powerful way. That's merely one of the nonprofits in which I tend to volunteer. The Olympic movement, because my era was completely amateur, there was no retirement fund, there was no prize money, there were no sponsorships or endorsements allowed. And so the athletes from my era and before never really got rich off of their Olympic success.
Yeah.
And as a result, many of them are having a little bit of a hard time when they're surprised by something negative. An accident, an illness, an injury, a natural disaster can do so much more damage to an athlete of that era. And so we created the Olympians for Olympians Relief Fund to help not solve their problems, but rather to show sympathy and solidarity to help them get through this difficult time. There's a program in California called the Coroibos Foundation. Coroibos is the first recorded Olympic champion in ancient history. 774 BC, Coroibos of Elis wins a gold medal. That's the first name we know. Wow. So we named a foundation after him, and it provides training grants to Olympic hopefuls. So if you want to become an Olympian and your governing body says you got a chance, then maybe we can help provide you a little bit of money and help get you along the way. The third program in California is called Ready.
Is that, by the way, just for U.S. Olympic hopefuls?
It's for U.S. Olympic hopefuls who live in Southern California. It's very brief. The OORF, the Olympian Relief Fund, is good for any Olympian who lives in the United States and any Paralympian as well. We've included the Paralympians in the group. The third program is called Ready, Set, Gold, and it's a program where Olympians are invited to adopt local elementary, middle, or high schools and visit them once a month for 5 months and bring to those schools the message of sportsmanship, fair play, drug-free lifestyle, healthy living. We refer to these as the Olympic ideals. And so we've got Olympians teaching the Olympic ideals to little kids. And as I told you, most Olympians I know began their Olympic journey when they shook hands with an Olympian. This is a chance to shake a lot of hands with future Olympians.
That's awesome. So you mentioned the Olympic ideals. You just spoke about fair play. What we see today in the Olympics, non-Olympic sports, and outside of the Olympics as well, are people who are willing to bend the rule, if not totally ignore them, in order to win, right? In the business world, people are fudging the numbers, being misleading their clients, and there's a temptation always to win at any cost. What advice do you have, for, Olympic hopefuls, as well as just people in business and in life? Because it seems to me from that very first trip to Olympia, this idea, this sense of fair play took hold in your heart.
Sure. I have noticed the incidents of cheating in the Olympics are commensurate with the increase in the rewards for victory.
Mm.
If you win $1 million for earning a gold medal, all of a sudden it's a lot harder not to cheat.
Yeah.
And in the old days, when it was a purely amateur sport and there were no financial rewards, the incidents of cheating were less. They weren't absent.
Right.
Now, here's what I think. If we want to encourage our athletes to work hard and to keep on pushing, we shouldn't make the gold medal the only reward available. You shouldn't reward a kid for winning. You should reward him for doing the job as well as he possibly could.
Yeah.
So the coach needs to know, how fast is this kid capable of swimming? And if he swims that time and gets fifth, he should congratulate the kid as if he just won the gold.
Yes.
And bosses in the corporate world should know how much product can we legitimately sell? Is it good enough to convince the market to sell 800 units and make that a sufficient reward? Instead of saying, if you don't reach our stretch goals, you're fired.
Yeah.
That's where the management, where the system will design cheating, because there's no alternative. So we have to reward the best we're capable of, not only reward results.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I speak and I use our example of our crash in 1988, and people will look at that and go, well, the Jamaicans failed. And look, in pure sports terms, we did. We didn't cross the finish line. We didn't win. So in that sense, but then if you're absolutely right. If you look at the performance that you were capable of, if you look at the journey that you made, we came from not knowing a sport, anything about bobsledding, and in 4 months we're at the Olympic Games pushing the 7th fastest start time. Now that sounds like success to me, and so I realize that in today's world it's a hard concept to grasp. This idea that winning is not always about the final score. If your best swim time lands you in 5th place, then it's success. That's what we should be embracing, but people don't want to, and especially in the corporate world, people get so caught up in what the stock price is. Did the company meet numbers or did it not? And that becomes a challenge in getting people to move beyond just those final results and embrace this idea of fair play and growth, and not mediocrity, but being satisfied for what your best performance is.
I think many corporations put an emphasis on the stock price because many of the CEOs or the executives in the C-suite get rewarded according to the stock price.
So it's kind of like the gold medal, huh?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with the silver medal until you think you were capable of winning the gold.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong. In my silver medal event, the 200-meter freestyle, I never thought I was capable of winning a gold or even a silver. So when I won the silver, I was overjoyed. I was delighted.
Yeah.
Now, there are many other people who say, oh, it's too bad he lost. But I didn't feel that way because I knew what I was capable of.
Right.
I exceeded what I was capable of. And so somebody else is a little bit better, then I'm happy to congratulate them.
I'm glad you brought it up because I did look at those, 5 medals, 4 golds, 1 silver, and wondered how you felt. If I wondered if you were in line to win the gold and you just came up short, but now you're saying, no, that was like a bonus, as it were.
Well, as you indicated, I was the first Olympic swimmer in history to win 2 individual medals on the same day. Mm-hmm. There's only 2 men's events, 2 women's events, and 1 relay every day. So the odds of a backstroker swimming in a freestyle race are like the odds of a hurdler winning a medal in the shot put. It's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to show up after winning the gold in the backstroke, after defeating my East German hero, Roland Mathis,
Right.
45 minutes later, I'm on the starting blocks of a freestyle event, an event that nobody ever put me on the medal dope sheet because they didn't think I would win. And I led the race for 199 of 200 meters. That was a pretty good swim.
That's a pretty good swim. That one last meter, man.
I don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with the outcome, and I'm happy for the guy who won. And I should have been. And the people who felt like I'd failed, they did not understand.
Yeah.
It's easier to look at a swim race and say, did he win, than ask, gee, was John Naber capable of better than a 150.50? I don't know.
That's it.
My coach knew I did a great job. He was very happy to congratulate me.
And the thing too that I realized, and it certainly is being highlighted in the story that you're telling us, is, you know, each of us have to define what success means for us, because we tend to want to define success as the world sees success, as opposed to, you know, dreaming these fanciful, delusional dreams, but also knowing that once you have gone through what you describe as that gold medal process, that 8-step, recognizing where you actually are, and if that's your best, and you have given your best, then you ought to be satisfied, because then there's nothing more you could have done.
And I don't say you should be happy that you didn't win. That's not the point. But you should be happy that you did as well as you could have done.
Well, absolutely. I agree with that.
If you didn't do as well as you could have done, if I swam the 200-meter freestyle in 1 minute and 53 seconds and got a silver medal, I should have been disappointed in my performance.
Yes, yes.
And if I won the gold medal going slower than I was capable of, I should have been disappointed in my performance. I
agree wholeheartedly there as well. I agree, because, you know, being satisfied simply because you got to the top of the standings with a subpar performance suggests mediocrity to me. It suggests complacency, and that is a super highway to failure.
Can I give you an example?
Sure.
In the Olympic winter sport of snowboard half pipe, Shaun White, the flying tomato, every athlete does their routine twice, and the highest score of any single run is the score they use to determine the winner. Well, after his first run, he had such a high score that nobody in their second run was able to beat him. Before Shaun White began his run down the mountain the second time, he'd already won the gold.
Yeah.
That was guaranteed. And yet, he still did the double twisting mix spin or whatever he did. He gave the crowd a real thrill. He did a better score than he did in his first run, even though it didn't matter to the gold medal.
Yes, indeed.
Stacy Dragila won the first women's pole vault in Olympic history.
Yes.
She had the gold locked up. She had eliminated all her opponents, and yet she continued to jump because she felt she could do better. She tried to be the very best she could be, and that's what I think is an Olympic anecdote. And
it is also the thing that embraces the Olympic values. You know, it's we were talking earlier about a sense of fair play and not cheating and just doing your best. The Olympics really are about doing your best. So whether you're winning the event or not, are you doing your best? And that's I think something that I'm hoping to pass on to all of our listeners here, our viewers, that, even if you're not at the top of the leaderboard on the sales team, the question is, are you giving of your absolute best, and are you trying to improve? And as a matter of fact, the skills that you and I were both very, very good at are skills that have limited value in society at large. Indeed. So quickly on your back, nobody is willing to pay for that. I can't well be pushing a bobsled on the 95. Right. So the skill that we did so well isn't as important as learning the skills necessary to be really good at anything. Yeah. And the skills you learned as a bobsledder are what you teach people
to make them successful in any job, in any attempt. And that's where the value of sport is, not because it's important to be able to throw a ball through a hoop, but it's important to be able to learn how to get the most out of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, that's the keep on pushing philosophy. And that is a gold medal process as well, John. You are a legend, man. And I'm so honored to be able to spend this time with you, kind of picking your brain, hearing about your experiences and how you've translated something that, as you described, has very little value, swimming on your back really fast, but taking the skills that you have developed from learning how to do that and applying them to other areas of your life and teaching other people how to do that as well. That is certainly an example for all of us to follow. And I appreciate you for appearing and Keep On Pushing.
Well, it's my pleasure, Devon. You're a gentleman and a role model to many, and I encourage everybody, no matter what they're trying to do, to keep on pushing.
Indeed. I appreciate you, John. Thank you so much.